In this video, we'll build custom styles for the items page, and we'll build a DateTime ValueConverter class that we'll use later to format a custom data template for the items page. Let's get started. Now let's take a look at an example of using styles in our app. To look at the template pages that are provided by Visual Studio, define a style with the key Layout Root Style. To see that, we can open up any of our pages. Let's choose ItemsPage.xaml. We'll double click, and what I'll do is zoom to 140%. In our page, if we scroll down to the grid, we see the static resource of Layout Root Style defined here. To see what that style looks like, we click on this and we'll select Go to Source. This opens up the common standard styles.xaml file and jumps to the Layout Root Style. And I'll full screen this. Similar to other styles that we've gone through, the Layout Root Style affects target type of panel controls. It has a series of properties. In this case, it's changing the background property and setting a specific brush, and that's the application page background theme brush to color in the background. Next, what we're going to do is actually go and define our own style, and that style will represent the background color for our application. And we'll do that by opening up app.xaml. Go ahead and just double click that. Make sure you're in the XAML view. And I'll just increase the font size here to 140%. Let me full screen this. What we're going to do is define two custom styles within this app.xaml file and then apply it to each of the different pages within our app. So let's get started. First, we're going to define a solid color brush. And let's set the key, and that's going to be how we refer to this. And we're going to call this brush Windows Blog Background Brush. And we'll set the color equal. And notice Visual Studio has a series of pre-built colors, but really what we want to do is set our own color by using a hexadecimal value, and that's FF0A2562. And what that does is represents a shade of blue. Let's close the tag for our solid color brush, and now we're going to add a new style, and that's going to represent the blog layout root style. And we'll build a style tag. In here we're going to have a couple of properties. First one is going to be key. And this is going to be the name that we're going to refer to this style, and it's going to be Windows Blog Layout Root Style. We're going to set a couple of different attributes, like the target type equals. In this case, it's going to apply to panel controls. Now let's set the based on attribute. We'll set this to a static resource, and we'll use the layout root style. And let's close this tag. And inside of this tag, we want to add one set of properties here. We're going to use the setter to do that. And we're going to set the background property. And we want the value to be our solid color brush. So we'll set value static resource. And the name of that brush is the Windows Blog Background Brush. And just make sure to close the tag here. Now, one thing to keep in mind is because you base the style on a system style, the layout root style is actually the one defined in that system style within the standard styles.xaml file. You need to make sure that the declaration for standard styles comes first, and then when you reference it, the XAML parser will know what it is. If we change the order of this and put this style before this, the XAML parser wouldn't know how to find that standard style. And by setting the based on property, what we're doing is telling our style to inherit from layout root style any properties that you don't explicitly set. Our new style is just like the default style, but with a blue background, and you can use it for all your pages. Next, what we're going to do is change all of our background pages. So let's zoom out and go into ItemsPage.xaml. And what we're looking for is this layout root style. Now under properties, do a search for style, and you should see this particular style, and you'll see the property marker. Click that. Now in this menu, select local resource, and this will list all the local resources that are applicable to our grid, and select the Windows Blog Layout Root Style, and that's the style that we just created. Once we do that, notice the XAML designer changed to that nice shade of blue. Now we need to do the same thing to our split page and our detailed page. So in Solution Explorer, click on Split Page and click on Detailed Page to open both pages. Within Detailed Page, go find the grid, click on Style again. Under here, change Local Resource to Windows Blog Layout Root Style. And we can scroll down and see if the style has changed to blue. Let's do the same thing for the next page, which is our split page. Go down to the style definition, make sure we're in the grid. Make sure we have style search for so we see it here in the properties window. And click the property marker under local resource, select Windows Blog Layout Root Style. And to see our change, we can switch to design view and we'll see that the entire contents of the split page is now blue. Let's make sure all of our pages are saved by clicking the Save button. Formatting data with the data template. In splitpage.xaml, let's make sure we have splitpage.xaml open. Just double click it. And I'll increase the zoom to 140%. Now within this page, if we scroll down, and I'm just going to collapse the title panel grid, and we see the item list view, list view. If we continue scrolling down, we'll see that there's an item template applied to our item, which is the standard 130 item template defined in common standard styles.xaml. Now what we're going to do is just select all of the item template, and I'll just cut it, and we want to run our application to see what it looks like without an item template. Now once we hit an item, we see what's rendered to the page is Windows blog reader.feed item. And what's happening is it's calling the toString method on the object that it's bound to, which is our feed item. Now let's jump back to our project, and I'll click Stop. And what we're going to do is add a display member path. And what display member path does is within this particular object, we want to display a path to the title property. Just by setting display member path of the title property for feed item, let's go ahead and click Run and pick an item. And now we do actually see the titles within our item, which is a little nicer. But what you really want to show is the title, author, and publish date for each post in the list. To show more than one property of the data item, we're going to define a custom template that tells the list view exactly how you want the data displayed. Now any collection controls like the list view control is derived from the items control class. And these controls have an item template property that you can assign a data template to. And the data template defines how your data looks. So what that means is we can take that feed item and then format it to display exactly how we want. Let's switch back to Visual Studio. And we do want to make sure to remove the display member path. And the reason for this is that you can't use the display member path and an item template at the same time. When you set the item template property, you have to make sure to remove the display member path setting. Now I'm going to press Stop, go back here and copy and paste my item template back into my file. With our cursor inside the list view, let's do a search for item template. And we see our item template with our property marker. Clicking on that will show us a menu. And this time we're going to select Convert to New Resource. And we'll zoom out. And what we want to do is use Visual Studio's tool to convert this item template into its own custom resource that we can then customize. To do that though, we need to make sure that we are in the split pane view and then we can actually see the XAML designer. As you can see right now, we're just in the XAML view. You can easily select the design view here. And within here, let's check the property marker, and we'll zoom in, and we're going to select Convert to New Resource. In the dialog, select Default List Item Template as the name, and we're going to select this document to put this in our Layout Aware page root. If by chance you don't see an option to put it in this document, it's likely because you clicked on Convert to New Resource not being in the design view. Make sure you click on the XAML page design view button to be able to get the option to put it in this document. Now let's click OK, and we'll zoom out. Now what Visual Studio has done is actually built a new data template inside our resource section of the split page. So let's jump to the XAML view by double-clicking, and under Page Resources, we'll see that we have a data template that is based on the standard 130 item template from standardstyles.xaml. Now let's take a second to look at this default item template and see what it has. We'll see that there is a grid that has two column definitions, one with width auto and one that takes the remaining width. The first column has a border control with an image inside it, while the second column has a stack panel with 3 text blocks for title, subtitle, and description, including the data binding for these. Now the names for these bindings are based on the sample data source used in the Visual Studio templates. What we're going to do is update these bindings to make sure that they map to the feed item from our blog reader. Title is fine. We're going to change subtitle to author, and we're going to change description to pub date. Now let's quickly check our work by clicking F5 and running this. And we'll select an item, and what you'll see is we do see the title, the author, and the publication date, and that even includes a date time because it's calling toString on the DateTime method. Now over the next set of exercises, what we're going to do is convert this image and customize this data to look like the data from the Windows team blog. And to see that in action, what we'll do is jump back to Visual Studio, exit full screen mode, and just stop our app here. And if you open up your browser to windowsteamblog.com, we are going to customize how the date is formatted to this green box and have that displayed directly within our app. Now the first thing we're going to do is switch back to Visual Studio, and we're going to build a value converter for the pub date. And what that's going to allow us to do is to convert and change how the publication date is displayed so we can see the month, the date, and the year. To add the value converter in our project, select it, right-click, and select Add Class. Within our class, let's call this DateConverter.cs and click Add. Now what we're going to do is just full screen this and make sure that we are zoomed in 140%. And let's make sure our class is actually public. Now to build a value converter, we're going to say that this date converter implements a particular interface. And we'll say that by using the colon operator. And the specific interface is IValueConverter. Now since we don't have the namespace reference here, I'm going to click Control dot on that, and you'll see that this is pointing to windows.ui.xaml.data. And I'll go ahead and select that to add that namespace. Now what we can do is select IValueConverter, and you can either use your mouse or press Control dot, and what you'll see is an option that Visual Studio will allow you to implement the interface IValueConverter. So go ahead and select that first option, and we'll see that Visual Studio has built the two interfaces requirements, which are these methods, a convert and a convert back method. The first method we'll implement is the convert method, and we'll delete the throw not implemented exception and start writing some code here. Before we convert our data, let's add some quick validation. And what we want to do is check if the value is null. And if it is null, we'll go ahead and throw a new argument null exception. Set value. We'll say value cannot be null. And next, because this is a date converter, we want to check if the actual date of the value that's passed in here is a date time. So let's add a quick if, and in case the type of is not of type date time, equals, we'll say value, and we'll get the type. And if that's not the case, let's throw a new argument exception. Throw new argument exception. And in here, what we'll say is just value must be of type date time because our convert is specifically a date converter. And we'll pass back the value. And to be clear, the value that's passed in here represents the name of the parameter that's throwing the error. So in this case, we're checking the value equals null. We pass back the parameter name of value. In this case, it has to be a particular type. And we pass back and let the person know who catches this error that the specific exception is for the parameter passed in of name value. Now let's add some code. And we can read in our datetime. We'll just call it DT. We'll do a quick cast. DT represents the publication date, and what we're going to do is format that date based on a parameter that's passed in, and it's either going to be a day, month, or year format. So first let's check if that parameter equals null. And if the parameter is null, what we're going to do is return, and we'll use the DateTime formatter. So if you type DateTime formatter and hit Control dot, you'll see an option to add the namespace windows.globalization.datetime formatting, and we'll go ahead and just add that. And under DateTime formatter, what we'll do is use the short date format. Select short date, format, and then pass in our datetime. Now if we just put our mouse over the format method, you'll see that what it does is returns a string. And it returns a string formatted to the short date format. And to help make that really clear, we'll just add a quick comment here. And I'll just quick copy paste a comment that shows this is what the normal publication date time would be, and this is what the short date format will return as a string. Let's add a couple more here, and we need to be able to handle day, month, and year. So we'll say if, and what we're going to be doing is saying string parameter equals. And if you pass in the parameter day, what we want to do is return a format based on the datetime format. And to show what that looks like, I'll just copy and paste the comment. We take the original date, and then what we're going to do is just return the date, the 27. So let's show how to do that by building a datetime formatter. And we'll call this date formatter equals new datetime formatter. And within here, there's a specific format template that we're going to use. Day.integer2. And this will format it to be 2 days returned. And what we'll do here is return our newly built date formatter, and we'll call the format method. Since we already specified the template or the style that it's going to be 2 days as integers, we simply need to pass in the date time, and what that'll return is that string using our format. The end result will end up looking like the 27. Next, what we're going to do is look for a string parameter of month. So under here, let's add a new else if, and hit tab, and let's look for a parameter named month. Now if we do see a parameter named month, we'll build a datetime formatter for the specific abbreviated format for a month. Just like we did before, let's build a datetime formatter, call it date formatter again, equals new datetime formatter. And this time the format template is going to be month dot abbreviated and 3-letter abbreviation. Just like before, we'll call our newly created date formatters format method, passing in the date time. And one thing we're going to do is actually make it to upper. And what that'll do is change our string to all uppercase. So the end result ends up looking like this. Now I'm going to copy and paste a comment in here that lets you know that we take our original date and we convert it into a 3-letter abbreviation and we make it all uppercase. Next, we'll add another else if, and we're going to check if that parameter is set to year. So if we set the parameter to year, we want a year formatted. Just like before, we'll build a datetime formatter. We'll call it dateFormatter equals new datetime formatter, and this time we'll set the specific property here in the template to be year.full, and that'll return the full year. And like we did before, we'll call it return dateFormatter.format, passing in our date and time. And to show what that looks like, I'm just going to add a quick comment here that says, given this particular format, it will return the full year, which will be 2011. Now let's add one more else statement. And this time, we're just going to return the date time to string. And that's if, for example, we don't actually know the requested format. dt.toString. Now that we've built the convert method, let's implement convert back. So first we'll delete the throw new not implemented exception. Let's convert the parameter value into a string, and we'll call it string value equals value as string. Next we'll add a datetime type, and we'll call this result datetime. And what we'll be doing is trying to parse that value. To do that, we'll say datetime.tryParse. We'll pass in the string value, and the out is if it does work, it'll actually have the value within result datetime. And I'll hit enter, and within here, assuming that did work, we can return the result datetime. Now if the tryParse fails, we'll return a dependency property, and I'm going to hit control dot here, and what we want to do is add the windows.ui.xaml namespace and the unset value. Unset value is typically used, let's say for example we had a list of images that we were data binding and we don't want to have an exception thrown if we can't find the specific path to an image. In our example, we'll only return the unset value if we can't parse out the datetime that was passed in to convert back. We've added a decent amount of code here. Let's go ahead and make sure that everything builds and compiles nicely. Now that we've compiled our project, let's go into Solution Explorer and select app.xaml, and go ahead and double click on app.xaml to open it up in the XAML view. Let's full screen the view, and what we're going to do is add a declaration to that datetime converter. Just like we did with our feed data source, we're going to use local and reference the date converter class. That's the class that we just built, and we're going to set the key value. And the key is what we're going to use to refer to this date converter later in our XAML binding. And we'll call it date converter. And let's just close our tag. By doing this, we can now refer to the date converter class in XAML binding and do a nice formatting for the date, month, and year.